My name is Emily, and I'm 43 years old. I've been married for 21 years, and I have a 20-year-old son. My husband's name is Robert, and he's 55. I work from home these days. I've loved this family for 20 years. Or at least, I thought I was happy. I want to share the story of how I almost lost it all. I grew up in a foster home since I was 1. By the time I was aware of my surroundings, Elisa, the director of the children's home, was like a mother to me. 2 years older than me, we're like siblings. Ryan and Olivia, twins. They also came to the foster home around the same time I did. Their parents had died in an accident. Thanks to them and Elisa, I had a relatively smooth childhood in the foster home. But when Ryan and Olivia turned 17, they were adopted by relatives and left the home. For the first time in my life, I felt a crushing sadness. At 15, I couldn't cope with the loss. I started to act out as the people around me became increasingly cruel. I began sneaking out to the city at night to vent my frustrations. Even when I was detained for being a minor and Elisa came to pick me up from the police station, I acted like I didn't care about her worries. Elisa had been through a divorce. She had lost a child to illness shortly after birth and was blamed for it by her then husband, leading to their divorce. After that, she started working at the foster home and became its director. She was the one who named me Emily. She told me she saw her lost child in me and raised me with a mother's love. But she was struggling with how to deal with me, her not biological but emotional daughter. One day, Elisa came to me, who was living a reckless life and skipping school, and suddenly started crying. "Even if we're not related by blood, you're my child. All the kids here are precious. But I'm only human, and I have special feelings for you." She stroked my head, saying, "Emily, Emily," and started crying. "I should have hugged you like this sooner. I'm sorry." She kept apologizing. For some reason, I felt both sad and relieved, and I hugged Elisa tightly while crying loudly. As an adult, I realized I was crying out of happiness, thinking someone needed me. From that day on, I started helping Elisa actively and began calling her mom. And eventually, I graduated from middle school and started working at the foster home. I was hired by Elisa, who is my mom. To become a social worker, I studied hard through correspondence school and earned my certification. Part of the reason I wanted to work at the foster home was because I believed Ryan and Olivia would come to see me someday. We ordered food supplies for the foster home from a local supermarket. And the delivery guy turned out to be the man I'd later marry. We started with casual conversations every day. But when I found out we liked the same musician, I felt an instant connection. From there, our conversations flowed more naturally, and we grew closer. Eventually, he asked me out on a date. My mom also told me to go, so I headed out on my first date. Since it was my first date experience at the age of 21, I was so nervous that I couldn't speak normally. After a few dates, he confessed his feelings on our 5th outing, and we started dating. When I told Mom, she said, "Finally, Emily has a boyfriend. It's about time. I feel a bit lonely, though," and blessed our relationship with a smile. Our relationship progressed smoothly. One of our best memories was going to a concert of our favorite artist after preparing dinner at the foster home. On the way back from the concert, he proposed to me. I was overjoyed and immediately told Mom, who tearfully and joyfully gave her consent. Her words about having a family stuck with me. And I vowed to love my family forever. At that time, I was 23. And he was 35. His parents were thrilled about our marriage. Even when I told them I was raised in a foster home and didn't know my biological parents, they said it wasn't a problem. He's an only child, but his parents just wanted us to have a happy family. I decided to cherish my future in-laws as well because they were part of my new family. This is because I realized that they are part of my family, including my in-laws. Soon after, we got married. I quit my job and left the foster home, as my husband suggested. I was a bit worried about leaving Mom to run the foster home alone, but she assured me it would be fine as she was hiring cooking staff. Soon after, I became pregnant. The thought of our precious child growing inside me filled me with immense happiness. But contrary to my joy, my once kind husband began to change. He showed no concern for my morning sickness and even called me dirty. He started eating out instead of having meals at home. When my in-laws found out about my struggles with morning sickness, they brought over some home-cooked meals. My husband wasn't home, so they asked me why. I thought it was normal for husbands to eat out during their wives' morning sickness, so I told them without any ill intentions. Upon hearing this, my in-laws stayed until my husband returned and scolded him for his behavior. He made some excuses but eventually apologized to me. Importance of family remained a constant theme. I got yelled at by my in-laws because I spoke about why my husband wasn't around. When I said, "I'm sorry. I thought this was normal life, so I didn't mean any harm," I was shouted at with, "No excuses!" I got scared of my husband's anger and instinctively protected my belly. The next day, my husband was back to his sweet self. He sincerely apologized and said, "Once your morning sickness is over, we'll eat at home. Until then, let's eat out." From then on, I started keeping a diary. I wrote about my baby's condition and my family every day. Conversations with my husband, who often came home late, became scarce. The morning sickness was bad, and I felt lonely and anxious. But even then, I thought it was easier than when I was separated from Ryan and Olivia. Yes, that separation was the hardest thing in my life, so nothing could be worse. Even after the morning sickness ended, my husband didn't come home early. And when he did, I could smell sweet perfume. When I asked, "You smell nice, did you meet someone?" he seemed surprised for a moment. Then angrily said, "Who I meet is none of your business." I didn't want to argue, so I didn't ask further. Even though I'm not savvy about social norms, I suspected he was cheating. I had no one to talk to, so I wrote in my diary as usual, but his betrayal was shocking. I kept quiet because I didn't want to upset him further. Our child was born safely, and it was a boy. My husband was thrilled. We named him Jackson. Apparently, my husband had decided on this name long ago, so he didn't consult me. Baby Jackson looked just like his father. Even my in-laws said, "He looks just like Robert when he was a baby." I had decided to love and never let go of the child I gave birth to, so I never complained, even when I couldn't sleep due to night feedings. My son was the light of my life, and I understood what that meant. My mom said I should come back home after giving birth, but my husband wouldn't allow it because he'd struggle with housework. So, I did all the shopping and housework after I was discharged. I could do it because it's what my family wanted. At first, Jackson was attached to me, but as he grew, he became more attached to his father. And he started saying, "I'll tell Dad," whenever I said something. When I asked, "What will happen if you tell Dad?" he said, "Dad will get mad at you." I couldn't say anything because my husband didn't want me disciplining Jackson. He said, "Someone not raised by their biological parents can't discipline." So, I tried to gently talk to Jackson instead of scolding him. When my husband wasn't around, Jackson was a sweet child who followed me around. But things changed when he entered middle school. He started taking money from my wallet. When I asked, "Jackson, did you take money from my wallet?" He said it's okay, it's his money. Dad told me to take it from you. Jackson replied. I said, taking it from my wallet without asking is different from being given it, don't you think? He just said, either way, it ends up in my hands, and walked away. At dinner, my husband and son were eating and chatting. Jackson told his dad that I scolded him for taking money from my wallet. Hearing this, my husband started complaining to me. How dare you, a high school dropout raised in foster care, interfere? I'm the one disciplining Jackson. I said, I just told him it's not okay to take money without asking. My husband told Jackson, it's fine at home, but never take from other people's wallets. Jackson said, I know that, Dad. Smiling. My husband praised him. That's my boy, you get it. From then on, both lectured me, saying, don't interfere with what we're doing. You're just a foster kid with limited education. I wondered, is it okay for family to just take money like that? But I kept quiet, not wanting to upset them. One day, I went to visit the foster home with my mom. She was delighted to see me. We had a good chat as the kids were at school or daycare. Mom said, let's go buy mobile phones today, one for you too. I didn't know what a mobile phone was, as I never watched TV. But when Mom explained, even I, who lacked material desires, wanted one. The idea of connecting to the world was appealing. I felt awkward about her buying it, but we went to the store. We got free models with a plan. Mom offered to pay, but I thought I should find a way to pay her back. I asked my husband if I could get a part-time job, but he said, it's embarrassing for someone like you to work. So, I thought about how to make money at home. I kept the phone off and hidden when the family was around. When they were out, I turned it on and researched ways to earn money from home. I learned about blogging for income and chose that path. I thought it was perfect. I could use my free time, and my husband wouldn't find out. I started reading various blogs to learn more. And finally, I started my own blog. Titled Grew Up in Foster Care with Limited Education, Naive Musings. I wrote about my life experiences. Gradually, my followers increased, and I started receiving comments. In 5 years, I had 20,000 followers and started earning money. My days became fulfilling. But as my blog shifted to my married life, the comments increased, saying my husband's thinking was wrong. I felt sad that my writing seemed like complaints about my husband. I apologized on my blog, saying he's a reasonable person and it was my poor writing that caused the misunderstanding. The comments on my blog increased even more after that post. Comments like "You're brainwashed" and "Emily, you're not wrong" started appearing. I was confused and began to consider quitting the blog to avoid disparaging my husband. Just then, I received a private message on my blog that nearly stopped my heart. It was from someone named Ryan. The message read, "Emily, it's Ryan. Do you remember me? Olivia is doing well too," and included a contact number. I called the number, and when I confirmed it was indeed Ryan, I broke down in tears of joy. Ryan and Olivia had been living overseas after being adopted by a cousin. They hadn't contacted me because they didn't want to bring up painful memories. Recently, Olivia discovered my blog, and while reading it, Emily, the blog owner, told Ryan that it might be Emily. Recently, Olivia found my blog and suspected it was me. Ryan read it too, saw their names, and reached out. He apologized for not contacting me sooner and thanked me for the love I'd shown them in my blog. I truly felt that starting a blog was a good thing. I met Ryan and Olivia at the foster home where my mom works. I thanked my mom for the phone that led to my blog income and told her Ryan and Olivia were coming. She was thrilled. Now that I had an income, I switched the phone bill to my account. I set up my mom's phone so she could easily read my blog and headed home. I got home a bit late. And Jackson, now 20 and commuting to college, was already there. As soon as I walked in, he demanded, "Give me $200. I didn't have it on me, so I refused, and he started yelling and throwing a fit. Scared, I headed for the kitchen. On the way, I saw my wallet tossed on the floor, emptied of cash. I remembered the blog comment, "Emily, you're not wrong," and began to think that maybe it's not okay for a child to take a parent's money. My husband came home and was shocked at the state of the house. I told him honestly that Jackson had thrown a fit because I didn't give him money. He yelled, "It's not your money, it's mine. If Jackson needs it, just give it to him. You have no right to it, you parasite." I finally asked the question that had been on my mind. "Why did you marry me?" He said, "Everyone else was getting married, and I thought you'd be submissive." "Just that?" I asked. "What else could there be? You think you're attractive? If you have a problem, leave. Go back to the director of the children's home who isn't even your birth mother. I don't need this boring home life," he said and stormed out, telling me to clean up. I couldn't sleep a wink last night. Neither my husband nor Jackson came home. I grabbed my phone from the dresser and turned it on. Emails from Mom, Ryan, and Olivia were waiting for me. They said to meet at the Child Protective Services office today. Multiple emails with the same message made it clear this was urgent. I clenched my phone and rushed to the Child Protective Services office. When I got there, only Mom was present, having just sent the kids off. She looked shocked at my tear-streaked face. Then Ryan and Olivia walked in. Both looked just like I remembered. They hugged me. I felt warm, and then the tears just wouldn't stop. Ryan and Olivia were crying too. Mom joined in, hugging us all and crying. After a while, we started talking. Ryan broke the ice. "I read your blog. Is that story true?" he asked. I nodded. Then my mother also spoke. Mom chimed in. "Have you been living in shame? I raised you to be a daughter I could be proud of anywhere. What about your parenting? What qualifications did you study so hard for?" She seemed angry but was crying. Ryan said, "If that blog is true, the problem is with Emily's husband. Marriage is a partnership. Why can't Emily speak her mind?" His fist was shaking. Olivia added, "Didn't you read the comments? Why don't you listen to them? What's written there is common sense." They all gently scolded me. Maybe I was wrong. But for 20 years, I truly loved my husband and Jackson, and it was hard to change how I felt. Mom sensed this and asked, "Emily, do you know how much we love you?" "I do. You always put me before yourselves." I thought I was doing the same for my husband and Jackson. I said I believed that true love meant sacrificing myself. But Mom shook her head. "That's not it. I'm very happy. I get happiness from you. But are you really, truly happy now? I don't think you're happy if only your husband and child are." I thought in silence. I knew Mom, Ryan, and Olivia loved me. They never pushed me away. They always listened and accepted what I said. And they were genuinely concerned for my happiness now. What about my husband and Jackson? Had I ever felt love from them? The more I thought, the more I realized I hadn't. But then I remembered Jackson's smile when he was little, and it broke my heart. Jackson was adorable. He used to look at me with a smile. That Jackson is gone now. I told them about what happened yesterday. Mom said, "You can't sever the ties with your child. Even if you divorce, Your only child is Jackson." I also told them what my husband had said when I asked him why he married me. Mom took my hand and said, "Your husband told you to leave, right? Then, Emily, come home. It's what he wants, isn't it? You can do that." I think she was leveraging my misguided belief that what my family says is for the best, a belief almost akin to brainwashing. So, I thought it would be better for the family if I got divorced. Even facing the prospect of leaving my family, I realized it didn't hurt as much as when I had to part with Ryan and Olivia. I went home and said to my husband and Jackson, "Let's get divorced. I'll be the one to leave." Just as I suspected, my husband and Jackson were thrilled. "Good riddance to the parasite. Awesome. Lucky us." Seeing their joy, I was convinced that I was neither needed nor loved by them. I thought this was for the best, got their signatures on the divorce papers, and left the house with my few belongings. On the way to the Child Protective Services office, I strangely didn't feel sad. It felt like everyone got what they wanted. I returned to what I could call my original home, the Child Protective Services office. I had a small income from my blog, and I started helping Mom while thinking about the future. Especially since the facility was facing financial difficulties. One day, Ryan and Olivia came to the facility. They brought me a book publishing offer. They had become executives in a publishing company. The people who adopted them were relatives of Ryan and Olivia's father, who had refused to take them in. These relatives had vowed to adopt Ryan and Olivia once they were financially stable, and they did. They turned around a failing publishing company and grew it significantly. Ryan and Olivia had shown my blog to the company's CEO, who found it interesting and wanted to publish it. I was hesitant because I didn't have much education and wasn't confident in my writing. But they assured me an editor would help, so I agreed. From there, Ryan, Olivia, the editor, and I had several meetings and published the book. My book, Grew Up in Foster Care with Limited Education, Naive Musings, caught the media's attention thanks to the publishing company and my followers, and it became a bestseller. I started getting interview requests from the media. I was hesitant due to my shyness, but Ryan and the others encouraged me, so I agreed. Appearing on TV made my ex-husband and Jackson aware of my book. My ex-husband called the Child Protective Services office where I was. When I answered, he said, "How are you? I heard your book is selling well. If I'd known you could make money like this, I wouldn't have divorced you." I stayed silent. "How about we live together again? We could even remarry," he added. Still, I said nothing. Assuming I was in a bad mood, he handed the phone to Jackson. "Mom, I miss you. I want to live with you again. I want to eat your cooking." They both seemed to have changed their tune. I asked Jackson, "Did you read my book?" He said he hadn't, so I asked him to ask his father if he had read it. Turns out, neither had. I said, "Read the book. Once you do, you won't be able to make calls like this," and hung up. A few days later, it seemed they started getting cold stares from neighbors, coworkers, and classmates even without reading the book. In a panic, they bought and read the book, realizing it candidly depicted what they had done to me. Since then, I've heard nothing from my ex-husband or Jackson. My ex-husband reportedly won't forgive me for making him feel small. Jackson, who was dumped by his girlfriend and felt down, was talked sense into by a friend. He said, "I'll show Mom that I've changed and earned her forgiveness," and decided to quit college to become a licensed clinical psychologist. He says he wants to provide mental care for children at this Child Protective Services facility if I ever forgive him. I believe people don't change easily, but part of me is waiting for that day since he's my child. I've come to think that blood ties don't matter. If you're connected by the heart, You can become a family, even if you're not related. Oh, you're the famous photographer. Are you here for a shoot today? The woman in front of me stared at me excitedly. She, whom I met at the beach during clamming season, seemed to know I was a photographer. Despite being busy playing in the sand with her family of 3, she listened to my story with great interest. It's deeply moving to recall my early days as a photographer, when I struggled to gain credibility and couldn't get any assignments. When I told her I was here for a shoot, she eagerly volunteered to be my subject. But could you please make sure not to show my child's face? She said this, pointing to a cute little girl. The girl, about 2 or 3 years old, looked at us with wide, round eyes. Of course. What about you? As I asked, the father looked pale and darted his eyes around, repeating vague responses. It's understandable, I guess. After all, the father building a sandcastle with the girl is my husband. My name is Sophia. A 30-year-old freelance photographer. Most of my work involves school events and weddings in the area. I capture moments brimming with smiles and friendship, sharing them through my photos. It's not just about taking pictures, but about capturing people's memories and emotions, sharing happiness. Capturing these joyful moments of people is my job and my passion. But my life's shutter stopped in an instant due to an unforeseen event. My husband, Oliver, was a busy businessman. Involved in developing leisure facilities and tourist spots, he traveled all over the country. Though we rarely had time together, the moments we shared were special. Even the briefest times with him, his smiles were what kept me going. I never intended to quit my photography. We promised to support each other, build our careers, and got married. I took the opportunity to work style from traveling around the countries to work from home. Starting with posting landscape and permitted portraits on social media. As virtual galleries and online exhibitions expanded my reach, not just among publishers and peers but also among a general audience, my followers rapidly increased. On social media, where I could do live streams, I began to earn from talking shows and explanations about my photographs. It was fulfilling and enjoyable that I told the backgrounds or discussed techniques sharing my photos. Steadily growing my followers, I balanced outdoor shoots with social media promotions. Oliver was still constantly on business trips. I inevitably spent more time with my in-laws, James and Emma, who showed interest in my social media activities. Teaching them how to use smartphones and social media, we grew closer, and they often tuned into my photos and live streams. Both are wonderful people who ensure my fulfilling days. The company kept me from feeling lonely while my husband was away. However, there was a significant void in our lives. We couldn't have children. Despite numerous tests, it just wasn't happening. As we both wanted kids, we were upset because we just couldn't seem to have a baby for years. And it started affecting us. Oliver, who once supportive, grew tired of the financial strain and frequent hospital visits, and became increasingly discouraged about infertility treatment. At that time, his project enters the climax, so he stays away from home for days, traveling around the countries. It was clear that his focus shifted from our childlessness to his challenging work. His concern for my inability to conceive diminished, replaced by work talks. I felt lonely but tried to understand his busyness. Yet, no matter how understanding, we weren't emotionally close. Yesterday, I had a meeting with a client, and it looks like a new project is starting. I'll probably be away for a while starting next week. He said this, taking shirts and other laundry from his large suitcase. I had just gotten back home, but still, I hurried to start the washing machine for them. Oliver, when he runs out of clean clothes, rather than doing laundry or sending them for cleaning, he just buys new shirts. He says it's faster and foolproof, but I prefer to save where we can. So, what about the hospital? That's impossible. I have to go too, right? I can't take off work, and next week is a no-go for me. I sighed softly, making sure my husband couldn't hear. I had made a hospital appointment, but there's nothing I can do if he's out on a business trip. It would be inconvenient for his company, and I was happy that his hard work was being recognized. I didn't want to be a nuisance. Well, but I'm busy too, and it's tough. You also out working on a shoot, right? Let's both keep up the hard work. Yeah. Take care of yourself too, Oliver. I was dismissed so easily, yet I didn't speak my mind. Maybe he doesn't want kids anymore. But I'm too scared to ask if that's really the case. Should I just accept it quietly, or should I bring it up, even if it's roundabout? I'm torn. I'm good at capturing people's joy and sorrow through my camera. But now, I'm just going through the days, not even aware of my own feelings. I feel like I'm getting trapped inside the frames of my photos. Then, one day, a well-textured white envelope arrived at our house, with a logo of a famous resort company on it. It didn't seem like just another piece of direct mail, so I hurriedly opened it. Inside was a voucher for a stay at a luxury hotel by the sea. And it appeared to be for 3 people. Why was this sent to us? With a sense of foreboding, I quickly went to my husband. Oliver, this came in the mail. Do you know anything about it? Of course, I wasn't accusing him from the start. I made sure to ask in a way that didn't sound confrontational, just casual. He stopped reading his newspaper and looked at me. His expression was blank, but his eyes narrowed slightly, almost glaring. I'd never been looked at like that before, and I couldn't hide the chill in my heart. Oh, that. A colleague couldn't make it, so it was booked in my name. It's nothing weird, so give it back. He reached for it. Without saying a word, I handed over the envelope and tickets. Oliver snatched them from me. But when he saw the name on it, he looked back at me, clearly annoyed this time. This is addressed to me, right? Don't open my mail without asking. I was taken aback and quickly apologized. But with my husband in sales, various DMs arrive. I've been disposing of the ones that come home without much thought, so I was surprised at his reaction. I'm sorry. I didn't know if it was direct mail, just wanted to check. I'm here today, you could have just asked me. He took the envelope to his room, and I couldn't ask any more about the tickets. I wasn't fully convinced why he had to book tickets for his colleague, but I had no choice but to accept his explanation. But then, not even half a month later, something else happened. It was May, approaching our wedding anniversary. We were supposed to gather at the in-laws' house, but he suddenly announced a long business trip. At first, I was speechless and confused. A business trip? On our wedding anniversary? In my job, I often get requests for family portraits or landscape photography. But I had plans, so I had taken the day off. Normally, a regular company, including Oliver's, would be off on Memorial Day. At least, his company should be closed as usual. He shrugged his shoulders lightly and forced a smile. It was a sudden decision, had to be done. I can't help but work through the holiday, so please go to the gathering for me. I know he's proud of his job and has been serious about his career since before we got married. But gradually, I find myself less convinced by his reasons for work and business trips in those casual moments. In the end, he just pulls along his favorite suitcase and leaves for work. Although they were angry at his attitude, because his call was so late that it was close to our wedding anniversary, they tried to make me comfortable. Sorry for making you free up your schedule in vain. I'll give Oliver a strict talking to next time I see him. Emma said that, but all I could do was give a wry smile. Originally, we were supposed to stay a few days after getting together. Oliver was the only child for them. I was told it would be sad if I left early, so I decided to stay a few days after our wedding anniversary as planned. I brought my camera and took pictures of them doing housework and everyday life, and scenes I usually don't focus on. I spent time thinking about shooting plans, but part of me felt the void of Oliver's absence. For work and a change of pace, I decided to visit the coast one station away. Around Memorial Day, the beach is busy with people clam digging and families enjoying their time. Some opened colorful beach umbrellas, enjoying walks and sunbathing. I walked along the beach with my camera around my neck. Suddenly, I stopped, noticing a family building a sandcastle. I paused at a familiar voice. I was glad I wasn't holding the camera in my hand. I thought that right in front of that scene, I wouldn't have been able to keep from dropping something. There was Oliver, with a young woman and a toddler, surrounding a sandcastle. They looked like a happy family, gathering white sand and shells. I couldn't believe my eyes. But then, the hotel tickets that arrived home, his frequent long business trips, his indifference, all came back to me. It would have been an ideal family scene for a photo shoot if it were a work assignment. But I couldn't believe my own husband was in it. The toddler, maybe 2 or 3 years old, seemed to match the time when I felt Oliver drifting away. He already had another family. Whether his real child or not, my intuition as a wife told me there was a blood connection. I felt like a glass frame in my heart was shattering. The photo inside that frame was supposed to be full of our happy smiles. I decided to speak up. Not to Oliver, but to the woman playing with the toddler. The woman, wearing a large straw hat, looked surprised as I suddenly spoke to her. I managed a smile and apologized for the abruptness. Then I pulled out my business card, explaining I'm a freelance photographer. My card only had my professional name, but also included my social media contact details. The woman looked interestedly at the card, then started searching for me on her mobile phone. Meanwhile, Oliver, fully aware of me, stared frozen at a point on the sand. "Would you mind if I take a photo of your family? I sometimes do live streams showing photography tips." "What? Sophia, I know you. I follow you. You post tips for mobile photography, right?" She was excited, unaware of my situation, happy to be approached by a minor celebrity on social media. I was surprised she was a follower, but her enthusiasm seemed to extend to agreeing to a live stream as well. When I boldly invited her, she was all in before I could finish. "Of course!" exclaimed, overjoyed. I felt guilty for deceiving, but my goal was to somehow document the other family Oliver had. "Can you teach me some photography tricks for mothers? Oliver, you're okay with that, right?" Oliver, caught off guard, was in a panic. I could tell he was desperately trying to avoid looking at me and thinking of an excuse. "Maybe we shouldn't, show faces. I do model for brochures, Oh, could you make sure not to include the child?" Later I learned that the other woman, Amelia, was a model he met through his company's PR work. Of course, I agreed, carefully adjusting the mobile phone camera to keep the child out of the frame. I set up for immediate streaming and started a live broadcast under the guise of teaching Mother Amelia. With the child out of the picture, Oliver, who was attending to her, became the center of the screen. His strange smile was interpreted positively by viewers, quickly spreading as him being cute but nervous. After the live stream, I thanked them and left. But it wasn't long before Oliver chased after me and stopped me. He had left Amelia and the child behind. I just asked him, "What are you thinking?" But he just stood there, sullenly silent. Probably, being with Amelia was awkward, so he ran to me. What did he intend by stopping me? Finally, he spoke. "Sophia, please understand." How can I understand without a proper explanation? Well, I can guess after seeing. But I had no choice. I had a child with her before we had one. It's fine. Amelia's family is wealthy, and she said she doesn't need to marry me. Oliver finally confessed the truth, defiantly. I couldn't believe a young woman who got pregnant would say something so convenient. Probably, she knew he was married. "I wanted a child. But you couldn't have one. She is nice and honest, and the child is adorable, looks just like her. But that doesn't mean I've come to dislike you or hate living with you." His words were incoherent, leaving me at a loss. He seemed to argue for maintaining the status quo. "I won't trouble you. This situation is perfect for me. Isn't this good enough?" As if that's an excuse. I should have argued back. But I was so overwhelmed with pain, I lost my voice. My husband, seeing me silent, sighed as if he had convinced me, and was about to leave. But then, unexpectedly, two people arrived. It was James and Emma. "Oliver! Who is that woman and child?" James, red-faced, shouted. Oliver was shocked by the sudden appearance of his parents. "What? Why? I saw it on the live stream notification. Who is this long business trip with? Skipping home visits, with an unknown woman, and even a child." Before James could stop her, Emma stepped between Oliver and me, protecting me, sharply addressing Oliver. I was also shocked. They had seen the live stream on social media and realized something terrible was happening. Shocked by the sight of Oliver appearing as a couple with an unknown woman, they rushed over. Confronted by his parents, he ended up confessing everything about his relationship with Amelia and their child. "Such a disgrace to the family." He was struck by a strong slap from Emma, who was rendered speechless. James glared at him with an expression so terrifying that I thought he would have punched him if not for the slap. They left Oliver behind and took me to their car. Following their apologies and strong recommendation, I decided to divorce. After exposing Oliver and his affair with Amelia and securing compensation from them, things settled down for a while. However, as the divorce proceedings and investigations went on, various truths came to light. Firstly, Amelia truly knew Oliver was married. Given her willingness to have a child without marriage, it seemed she had prepared herself to some extent for a relationship with a married man. She had tried to keep the issue under wraps not just for money, but probably to keep Oliver around as long as possible. Upon realizing this, she became outraged and blocked all my social media accounts. Not only that, she started posting recklessly on various platforms, inadvertently revealing herself as the other woman, which only garnered sympathy for me. Her relationship with a married man caused trouble in her family home. Being driven out and nearly losing her home, she brazenly tried to live in my former in-laws' house. Naturally, they firmly refused to let her set foot on their property. Next, Oliver's secrets began to unravel. During the compensation claim investigation, numerous women and men connected to him came forward. It turned out he had repeated affairs during his business trips, with several partners over multiple occasions. Some of these affairs involved women who were engaged or married. I decided to send the data from the infamous live stream. A little investigation would reveal that I, the legitimate wife, was the streamer, and the people on camera were Oliver's mistress and their child. As a result, women who were deceived into thinking he was single and husbands whose wives were taken from them became angry and sued Oliver. He faced lawsuits from many people, including me, with no choice but to accept them all. As the truth about my husband continued to emerge, Amelia fled with her child. Probably fed up, she chose to escape from her relationship with him. The turmoil she caused on social media calmed down, and her accounts disappeared, so I decided to let her be. However, considering her nature of boasting about affairs on social media, it was unlikely she would just disappear. Sure enough, Amelia started posting under a completely different account. But her posts, portraying herself as a tragic heroine, were quickly identified and sparked outrage. Subsequently, she would delete her account when things got bad and create new ones, like a phoenix rising from the ashes. Abandoned even by Amelia, Oliver apparently turned to his parents in the end, but their learning about his multiple affairs infuriated them further. Without any apology and only asking for help because he was in trouble, the parents-in-law decided to sever ties with their son. After the infidelity scandal, Oliver was burdened with a significant amount of compensation. As legal proceedings progressed, inquiries from mistresses and their husbands poured into his company, complicating the situation further. Worse still, this wasn't the worst outcome. His face being exposed on social media and the revelation of a child from an affair was an unprecedented scandal, especially since it happened during a business trip. The information spread quickly, and comments of shock and anger flooded related facilities and reviews associated with his company. The drop in trust due to the scandal spread both internally and externally, prompting the management to feel a sense of crisis and rush to devise strategies. However, not being familiar with crisis management, they were forced to hastily consult experts and develop communication strategies. Meanwhile, they instructed employees to provide accurate information, desperately trying to quell the confusion. The scandal led to numerous inquiries and criticisms from both inside and outside the company, rapidly tarnishing Oliver's reputation. He became an outcast at work, completely isolated within the company. In an uncomfortable atmosphere, the company soon wished for his resignation, and Oliver had to look for a new job. He was competent and had good sales performance. Preferred by older generations who don't use social media, he quickly found a new job. But human nature doesn't change. In less than 6 months, he was rumored to have made advances on the manager's wife and tried to expense motel charges from a business trip. He was fired and, even after joining new companies, kept causing troubles in his relationships and getting dismissed. After repeating this cycle, he is now hopping from one industry to another, being driven out from everywhere. Meanwhile, I maintained a relationship with my parents-in-law even after the divorce. Thanks to their care, I have been living peaceful days. It's because of their support that I was able to start anew after my relationship with Oliver ended. For a while after the divorce, I found it painful to take photos of children. Even though they got hurt betrayed by their son, they made an effort to show their good relationship and supported me. They helped me realize that my relationship with Oliver wasn't everything about marriage. They cared to give me the strength to believe again. One day, I captured a photo of my parents-in-law talking peacefully. I plan to feature this photo in my next online photo exhibition. They were quite embarrassed, but I think they'll be happy in the end.